Perek Bey's Mishna Zayin. If you remember, in Mishna Gimel in this Perek, we said Hatahirim Shebekli Cheres, the vessels of earthenware that are automatically tahar because they don't have a receptacle, they have no walls, they had no rims. And if I remember correctly, we gave two examples: the tavla, the tray she'ein lo lizbeis, that didn't have any rim, and the machta prutza, the coal pan, the pan made to shovel out the coals, that was prutza, that didn't have any walls. So our Mishnah conversely says hatamein shebekli cheres, the earthenware vessels that can become tamei because they do have the rim, they do have that receptacle, is a tavla, is a tray sheyesh lo lizbeis, that does have a rim, umachta shleima, and a coal pan that's shleima, that does have walls to retain the coals. And even though this all seems pretty obvious because it's implicit from the Mishnah Gimel, that if those vessels are tahar because they don't have the rim and the wall, then obviously if they do have rims and walls, then they are tamei, they are susceptible to tamah. But stylistically, Mishnayos do that sometimes, that they'll say that these vessels are tahar because they don't have walls, and if they do have walls, then they are makabel tamah. So here is the tavla that does have a rim, and therefore it is makabel tamah. And over here is the coal pan that has walls all around it, and therefore it is susceptible to tamah. Now the Mishnah says a case where I was very excited when I saw it, because people these days have these types of vessels. So let's read on in the Mishnah. V'tavla, a tray, shehi maleya ka'aras, which is filled with bowls, built-in bowls. So look at this tray again. Imagine the tray had built-in bowls. So many people have vessels like this these days, where you have on the Shabbos table a vessel with many separate bowls in it to put your dips in. Dips are a big thing these days. In this bowl you could put in the eggplant dip. In this bowl you could put in the onion dip, which, by the way, it's very easy to make yourself. In fact, anyone who contacts me with a good question, I'll happily give them my recipes. So again, over here you have many different bowls to carry the different dips, and the question is, if one of the bowls becomes tamei, does that make the rest of the bowls and the tray tamei? And interestingly, the Mishnah says no. Just because one bowl becomes tamei doesn't mean the rest of the bowls become tamei. We view each bowl independently, simply because each bowl doesn't add to the function of the next bowl. The onion dip doesn't add to the function of the eggplant dip. And therefore, even though they're connected at the base and they're all connected to one big tray, they're all considered independent vessels. Although the Mishnah does say one exception, that if the rim around the tray overextended all the bowls, something like this, so therefore, if that rim becomes tamei, then all the bowls becomes tamei. Because we view the rim as servicing all of the smaller bowls because it overextends it, and therefore this tray can hold more items. So we view the walls, the overextended walls, as servicing each of the smaller bowls, and therefore, if the walls become tamei, all the inner bowls become tamei. So let's read it inside. V'tavla shehi maleya ka'aros, and a tray that's filled with bowls. Nitmes achas mehen b'sheretz, if one bowl becomes tamei with a sheretz dips into its airspace, lo nitma kulam. All the other bowls don't become tamei. As we said, each bowl retains its own individual status. But the Mishnah says the exception. If the tray has a rim that overextends, it overextends the bowls. So nitma achas mehen. So if one of the bowls becomes tamei, nitma'u kulam, then all of the bowls become tamei. Because if the sheretz dipped into one of the bowls, it automatically had to first go into the airspace of the rim, which overextended the bowls. And once the rim becomes tamei, all the vessels, all the inner bowls become tamei too. Now the Mishnah says that these same halachas apply to the spice box. Look over here, the spice box, and they would use each of these sections for a different spice, and therefore all of these bowls are considered different individual bowls, and just because if one becomes tamei doesn't mean the other bowl becomes tamei, unless the rim overextends, and then they'll all become tamei. And similarly to the scribe's box, look at this scribe's box. I couldn't find the picture, so I drew it myself. So you have the scrolls in this section, you have the feathers in this section, you have the ink in this section. So just because one section becomes tamei doesn't mean the other ones do. So let's read it inside. V'chein, and similarly, beis tevolin, the house of the spice box, shel cheretz of earthenware, v'kal morim hamitayamis, and the scribe's box that has sections in it. These two vessels have the same halachas, that just because one of the boxes, one of the sections becomes tamei doesn't mean the other ones do. Now the question that comes up though, is that if you look at the spice box, imagine a sheretz dipping into this middle section. So as we said, we'll call this section 2. So section 2 will become tamei, but section 1 and section 3 remains tahar. What needs explanation though is that once the second bowl becomes tamei, so technically the inner wall of section 2 is the outer wall of section 1. And shouldn't that make section 1 tamei? Because you have tumah hitting against the outside of the bowl, of section 1 bowl? And the answer is that earthenware vessels can't become tamei from the outside. So just because there's tumah on section 1's outside wall, that doesn't make section 1 tamei, because earthenware vessels can't become tamei from the outside. However, if we come here to a wooden spice box, wood can become tamei from the outside. So if section 1 becomes tamei, then automatically section 2 and section 3 and section 4, then automatically section 2 and section 4 become tamei, because tumah is hitting the outside of section 2, and tumah is hitting this outside of section 4, which makes 2 and 4 tamei, which then will make all the other sections tamei, one by one. So to retain the tumah in a wooden vessel is a much harder thing to do. But the Mishnah finds a way to do that. And the way to do that is, if you remember, the Rabbanon made a decree called tumas mashkin, that liquids that have the tumah status of a rishon are able to transmit tumah to vessels midirabanan, because midiraisa only an ava tumah could make vessels tamei, but midirabanan, liquids that are a rishon can also. And in order so that people should remember that it's not the araisa, the tumah is not the araisa, and people shouldn't come to burn their tumah, their truma that became tamei, the Rabbanon made an oddity in the decree to help people remember that it's only midrabanan, and they said that if the liquids that have this tumah status of a rishon makes a vessel tamei from the outside, only the outside of the vessel becomes tamei and not the inside. And therefore, if section 1 becomes tamei through tumas mashkin, and therefore the tumas mashkin is hitting the outside walls of section 2 and section 4, so the rule by tumas mashkin is that only the outside of the vessel becomes tamei, and the tumah doesn't go to the inside. So let's read it inside. Ubeis tivolin shel eitz, and the spice box that's wood. So how do you retain the tumah to one of the sections? Shenitma echad b'mashke. If one of the sections became tamei through tumas mashkin, which is a rishon, so lo nitma chaveroi, then its adjacent sections don't become tamei, because that's the rule by tumas mashkin. That the oddity in the decree was that if it makes a vessel tamei from the outside, the tumah doesn't spread to the inside. Now, although it doesn't spread to the inside, what about the wall itself? The top of the wall itself, over here, the top of the wall, does that become tamei from tumas mashkin? Or maybe just the outside becomes tamei of the wall and not the top of the wall? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that half of the top of the wall, which is part of the outside, which is towards the outside, becomes tamei, because that's sort of servicing the outside of the vessel. And the top half of the wall, which is servicing the inner part of the vessel, remains tahor. Now the Tanakama argues, and he holds that no, the whole thing becomes tamei, which is how we paskin. But let's read Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri in the Mishnah. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Cholkin es ovio, we divide the width of the top of the wall. Hameshamish letomei tamei, what services the tamei part of the outside wall is tamei. Hameshamish letor, what's servicing the inside of the vessel, the top half of the wall which is towards the inside, is tahor. And again, the Mishnah says, Im yeshlo lizbeis odev, if the rim of the wooden spice box overextends, then as we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, nitmo achad mehem, if one of the sections become tamei, then nitmo chaveroi, then they all become tamei, because an overextending rim is considered servicing all of the inner bowls, and therefore, if that becomes tamei, then they all become tamei. Now go ahead and read the Mishnah.